This is going to be one of those videos that before I say anything, I'm going to have to ask you to hear me out. Not only am I going to be discussing a controversial book, but I'll also be having a controversial opinion about it. Jennette McCurdy recently published her debut adult fiction novel titled Half His Age. After the success of her memoir titled I'm Glad My Mom Died, people were excited to see her continue her career as a writer. And despite not having read her memoir myself, I was also excited for this new release. I know, how have I not read I'm Glad Your Mom Died? I'm glad your mom died? I'm glad my mom. No, I'm not glad. Fuck. I've heard amazing things about the memoir, and I believe that it's good, which is what prompted me to pre-order her book, Half His Age. Honestly, when it comes to books written by celebrities, I feel like it's usually a 50-50 on whether or not I'll personally like them. But Jennette McCurdy demonstrated a genuine talent for writing, as evidenced by all the positive reviews she received on her memoir. I mentioned earlier that I had the opportunity to see her in conversation with another author, and just hearing the way that she talks about her writing process, it's very clear that she has invested time and effort into her craft. So I can acknowledge that Jennette McCurdy has a lot of skill, a lot of talent, and a lot of passion for her writing. Now, with all that being said, I did not like Half His Age. I don't think I can properly sum up how I feel about this book with a statement as simple as I didn't like it. So without further ado, hello, welcome back. It is a new day, a new sleigh, and a new video where I have something to say, and today I will be talking about Half His Age. Before we get any further, let me give you a brief summary of Half His Age. Waldo is a 17-year-old high school senior who, to say the very least, has had a rough life. Her mother practically abandons her in favor of whoever her current partner is. Her father left when she was a child, and to fill the void, Waldo obsessively shops online. In her senior year of high school, Waldo develops an infatuation with her creative writing teacher, Mr. Korgy. Mr. Korgy is a failed novelist, forced to teach high school creative writing classes in order to support his wife and son. After crossing multiple boundaries, they eventually begin their inappropriate relationship, which is about as disturbing and disgusting as you can imagine, if not more, because trust me when I say that this book does not hold back. It is not pulling any punches. There are very graphic depictions in this book. Over the course of the story, we see Waldo invest so much of her life into Mr. Korgy, displaying concerning behaviors, all while she eventually loses control over the relationship. So the book essentially spans their time together, starting from the beginning of her senior year and ending somewhere in the summer afterward. But that is the spoiler-free section. If you don't want to know what happens at the end, I suggest clicking off the video now. Although I think with a book like this, it's kind of hard to have spoilers. It's really hard to say. Like, the book ends in a way that you can imagine it ending. But regardless, I won't give any specifics. In case you want to read the book on your own, I would just caution you that yes, it's very graphic, and yes, they depict scenes between Waldo and Mr. Korgy that are very descriptive, to say the least, which I will address that later, but I just wanted to give you the heads up. So now I'm going to be going into my analysis and my personal review of the book. I'm going to be 100% transparent when I say that this portion of the video is going to be incredibly subjective. It is influenced by my personal experiences, my personal tastes, and it's all based on me as a reader. This is going to be a conversation, so please feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below, whether you agree or disagree with me. Really, I just kind of want to get my thoughts out because I'm still grappling with this book. I still haven't fully wrapped my mind around it, and I just feel like a lot of the reviews that I was seeing online didn't address the things that I was most concerned about, which is why I made this video. So no hate to Jennette McCurdy, no hate to the book, except for that one thing, which I will talk about. But first, let me talk about the biggest issue that I think really sums up why I didn't like this book. And that is that I had a different expectation for what this book was going to be about. When I heard the summary of this book, and even when I saw the cover, I thought that it was going to be like her memoir. It was going to be a critique. Where her memoir was a critique on child actors and specifically how the industry uses and abuses them, I thought this book was going to be a critique on people like Mr. Korgy, those that abuse abuse their positions of power, and specifically prey on young, vulnerable women. I thought this book was going to talk more about how evil and manipulative these predators in power are. But when you read the book, it's almost like it assumes that you already know that. It's not stating the obvious, which is that Mr. Korgy is an evil, manipulative pedophile that took advantage of Waldo. And after reading the book, it became clear to me that the focus wasn't supposed to be on Mr. Korgy, but more so on Waldo herself. In my opinion, I believe that the book is taking the conversation about inappropriate age gap relationships and taking a different route, shifting away from the critique of men and instead asking, what is it about us as women that makes us gravitate towards these relationships? For our character Waldo, she does not have a stable home life. She never received the adequate care and affection from her mother, which causes her to look for it elsewhere, even when that attention is in fact destructive to her. Towards the end of the book, Waldo's mother believes that she suffers from a condition called love addiction, a condition that causes her to have an unhealthy obsession with love. Waldo's mother reads from a pamphlet that lists some of the signs of love addiction, which include mistaking intense sexual experiences and new romantic excitement for love, constantly craving and searching for a romantic relationship, an unhealthy fixation on another person, which may include excessive fantasizing and obsessive compulsions, and potentially even stalking. And although this is her mother's discovery, we as the reader can identify that a lot of these signs also apply to Waldo. Over the course of her time with Mr. Korgy, Waldo often dedicates all of her free time to him. She leaves work to be with him, she stalks him at some point, and even breaks into his house when he's away on vacation. Waldo also displays other destructive behaviors, including obsessive online shopping and binge eating. It's not explicitly stated as binge eating, but from the context and the subtext, you can kind of assume that that's what we're implying. There are multiple chapters showing Waldo obsessively adding things to her cart, racking up hundreds of dollars worth of clothes on Shein, all to chase some euphoria, only to find that when the clothes arrive, they didn't look as good as they did when she added them to her cart. The gratification immediately fizzles out and she experiences buyer's remorse and eventually returns everything. All of these habits show that Waldo is obviously missing something from her life. She desperately tries to fill the void with anything she can, no matter how destructive it may be, which is how she begins her obsession with Mr. Korgy. He gives her the attention that she so desperately craves. He is someone that she believes is real and authentic, something that she believes is absent from the people around her. When Mr. Korgy is introduced, Waldo is immediately infatuated with him because he is so honest, even though it makes him look pathetic. He is introduced in chapter 3, and his first line of dialogue is, "I'm a failure." He talks about how he wanted to be a writer, a novelist, but how he eventually had to settle down and get real. So that's initially what catches Waldo's attention, because not only is he real, and not only does he give her perceived affection, but he also treats her like an adult. Waldo, as many people have pointed out, is a parentified child. She was forced to grow up too soon and too fast. Most of the book sees Waldo at home alone, while her mom is off with her current partner. The problem with parentified children is that their role as either the child or the adult is entirely dependent on what is most convenient. When her mom is off with her boyfriend, then she decides Waldo is an adult, someone that can take care of herself without any intervention from her mother. But when Waldo tries to communicate her needs and wants, suddenly she's a child who is asking for too much and doesn't understand the way the world works, which can be confusing, especially to the child in that situation, and that's what Mr. Korgy takes advantage of. He treats her like the adult that she sees herself as. He's just the person that meets all her needs. Really, he was in the wrong place at the right time. So that conversation about outside factors that might prime a girl like Waldo to fall for the manipulation of someone like Mr. Korgy is not what I have an issue with. My main concern is with how the book ends. The course of Waldo's relationship with Mr. Korgy sees a lot of ups and downs. As I mentioned at the beginning, their relationship spans the course of a school year, starting over winter break until Mr. Korgy eventually ends the relationship after spring break. Sometime after that and before graduation, Mr. Korgy and Waldo get back together until Waldo eventually decides that she has had enough and breaks it off for a second time. Now, this second time, when the relationship ends on Waldo's terms, Mr. Korgy is the one who falls apart. He has completely lost his control over Waldo, so to show his commitment to her, he breaks off his marriage and moves out of his home. They get back together shortly before graduation, and now, after she's out of school and once it's socially acceptable, they informally move in together. And this is where we truly see their relationship spiral out of control. The rose-colored glasses come off, and Waldo is not only unsatisfied, but also disgusted by Mr. Korgy. He desperately tries to cling on to her because now she's the only thing that gives his life meaning, and he even goes so far as to plan a trip to Hawaii to bring back the spark of when they first got together. Within the last few chapters of the book, Waldo gets all the way to the gate with him, is about to board the plane when all of a sudden her body decides that she has had enough. Her legs carry her all the way out of the airport and back home without a single word to Mr. Korgy. Now, in my opinion, I don't particularly like this ending for the story. Not because I think that their relationship needed this big dramatic finale, that they needed to get into this huge fight before she eventually breaks it off, but more so because the ending of the relationship isn't attributed to Mr. Korgy as much. It's not like Waldo realizes that he's a creepy pervert and a pedophile, and that he took advantage of her and that he was a manipulator, and that's why she got out of the relationship. To me, it almost read as though the book was attributing the failure of the relationship to Waldo herself. The reason she didn't stay with Mr. Korgy being that she was no longer fulfilled. She is now seeing him for the, quite frankly, disgusting old man that he is. And just like how the instant gratification of receiving Amazon packages wears off, so did the glamour of their relationship. And to me, this seems to neglect Mr. Korgy's role in all of this. It doesn't seem to acknowledge that as much as Waldo was chasing that gratification, so was he. Waldo was just the person that gave him attention and made him feel special. It could have been anyone else, and I hate to be so blunt and disgusting about this, but once Waldo aged out of his preferred range, it would have been someone else. The ending of their relationship reads more as though like the spark fizzled out. Now that they weren't sneaking around, and now that she finally had him, she no longer wanted him. Now she was starting to see things for what they really were. Now she was seeing the ways that he is genuinely pathetic, and understanding that just because he's real and honest about how pathetic of a person he is, that does not make him attractive. And there's really no discussion about the fact that Mr. Korgy is in fact a predator. Now, the reason I don't think that it's explicitly pointed out is because I don't think that's the intention of this book, and of course, our narrator Waldo doesn't understand this yet. She's a smart person. She's a very intelligent, very wise person. And throughout the book, we see that she objectively understands that the relationship between her and her teacher is inappropriate and that he's a manipulator, as evidenced in a specific chapter where they're going out to dinner and Mr. Korgy takes a call from his wife. She gets upset, and this is the first time that she actually makes some of her needs known. All she says is, "Can you please not take calls from your wife when we're on dates together?" And all of a sudden, he's like, "Okay, well, we can break this off." And he completely flips the table on her. So she immediately caves and is like, no, I'm sorry. Like, I just want to keep the relationship going. She recognizes that he has manipulated her, and she sees how sinister he's acting. But even though she has this example of him manipulating her, she still doesn't believe that she is someone that can be manipulated. She didn't think she was manipulated into entering the relationship with him or continuing the relationship with him because she sees herself as an adult. So while others may view the relationship as inappropriate, she believes that she is mature enough to handle it. She can only see the cracks in the relationship on a surface level, noting that the relationship is no longer fulfilling to her. His traits, which she once found attractive, she now views as disgusting, and she is, quite frankly, no longer happy with him, which is, I think, something that a lot of people that have experienced these kind of relationships can relate to. One way or another, these inappropriate relationships will inevitably fail, and it's not always because we get the clarity and we see how we've been manipulated and we see the predators for who they are. It's not until you grow up and think back on it that you realize that a 50-year-old man has no business being with a 17-year-old in any capacity. But our narrator, Waldo, is still in it. She's still 17, so she doesn't have the insight, she doesn't have the experience to look back on the situation objectively. All she can understand is what's happening to her in that moment. She can't see the bigger picture because, again, she's still too close to it. So already, as the reader, I was feeling uncomfortable, but up until when Waldo leaves the airport, I was okay with it. I understood that based on the context of the book and based on our narrator, that Waldo just wasn't at that point in her life yet. The frustration and sadness that I felt for Waldo being an adult that can see the relationship from an outside perspective was intentional. So I was able to sit with that and continue the book despite those feelings, because when she leaves the airport, even though she doesn't fully understand what this relationship really was and how sinister it was, there's still hope, because in the end, Waldo made it out. She is no longer with him and she is finally free. Not only that, but her home life is on the mend. Her mother has identified and is trying to recover from her own love addiction. And now that Waldo is no longer trapped in that relationship, maybe she can now get that affection that she was missing in her childhood. Maybe now she can finally fill the void with the motherly love that she missed out on for so long. But after Waldo leaves the airport, she goes back home. She has so many hopes for how her new life is going to be. Her and her mom were supposed to go on a vacation together. They were going to get that quality time, and Waldo was finally going to mend their relationship. But then she walks into the house. Her mother, who was previously committed to her recovery and swore off men for 60 days, is now in bed with her ex-boyfriend. And once again, she fails Waldo. And now, with no one left to rely on, Waldo runs away, and that is the end of the book. So, upon finishing the book, the first thing that I wanted to understand was, what was it trying to say? Obviously, there are themes of power, desire, loneliness, but what were we meant to take away from reading this book? What is Jennette McCurdy trying to say about these inappropriate age gap relationships? Well, nothing. She said that the book was meant to start a conversation, not necessarily give people a clearly outlined message, which I don't think is inherently bad, but in the case of this book, it does make a lot of sense. While this book does tackle a lot of the themes that I mentioned earlier, it doesn't really say anything about them. The problem is, again, that we have her memoir to compare to. That book sparked the conversation about child actors and what was really going on behind closed doors. It forced you to consider your favorite childhood TV shows and think about the people behind your favorite characters. Half His Age did not have a call to action, nor did it have a hard stance about the inappropriate age gap relationships. And I say that because while the book does point out some of the problematic manipulative behaviors by Mr.Korgy, that isn't ultimately why the relationship ends. Waldo does not realize that she has been groomed or that he is a predator. So to me, Half His Age just reads as a tragedy. It's simply a retelling of the worst point in someone's life, without a happy ending, without a resolution, and with very little hope. Now, once again, this is where I'm going to remind everyone that this is my review of this book. These are my opinions and my feelings, and I understand that people like this book for the very reason that I don't like it. I only make this video to provide an alternative perspective, and who knows, maybe someone can provide some insight that maybe I'm missing. Maybe my mind can be changed, but as of right now, this is how I feel. To me, this book is a lot like A Little Life. A Little Life is a book that I, quite frankly, refuse to read because based on everything I've heard about it, it's trauma porn. That is a book that is sad just to be sad. And hey, call me a toxic optimist, but I prefer to read books that are a little more hopeful. At the very least, if I'm going to be traumatized by a book, it has to be for a reason. They Both Die at the End is an example of a tragedy that I love and will recommend until the day I die. That book is sad on purpose because the reality is no one can escape death. The message of that book is very direct, that while we may know how the story ends, it doesn't make it any less worth reading. It encourages us as the readers to enjoy the journeys of these characters and to enjoy our own journeys in life. But Half His Age is not that kind of book. First, it seems to appeal to an adult audience, primarily women that have experienced these very same relationships. It's almost like the book wants you to relive the experience vicariously through Waldo, so you get to feel all the heartache and stress as Waldo makes the same mistakes that you once made, all while you as the reader know exactly how the story ends and have no way to stop it. And that's kind of the problem. The readers that have experienced similar relationships to Waldo also know that there is nothing about this story that's going to prevent it from happening to someone else. Because anyone can be manipulated, and to a certain extent, we all have the same thought in our mind. I'm different. My situation is different. I'm special. I'm mature enough to handle it. I've heard reviews from people saying that this book will be extremely helpful for young women, and I'm sorry, but the book kind of disproves that. This book can't be for a younger audience, if not for the sole reason that you can't learn from someone else's mistakes. Those of us that have gone through these kinds of relationships know that even when you were in the middle of it, there was nothing anyone could have ever said that would have gotten you to leave that relationship. Even your loved ones, even people with the best of intentions, could not have persuaded you to see the relationship for what it truly is. So the book reads more like it's for women that have already gone through it. As if to say, doesn't this sound familiar? Don't you remember when this happened to you? Didn't he say the same things that Mr. Korgy is saying to Waldo now? This book is simply a written account of a canon events that a lot of women go through. So it can't be a cautionary tale. It's a bitter reminder and a way to rehash old wounds that, for people like me, have long since healed. This is why I don't like the book. At this point in my healing journey, I don't want to read trauma porn. I don't want to make myself feel sad. I don't want to relive the bad moments in my life just to feel something, which I'm not saying is what people are doing with this book, but I have been in a point in my life where I did do those things. I literally used to look up like the saddest TV shows, saddest movies I could possibly watch and force myself to sit through it just to make myself cry because I couldn't express my emotions in a healthy way. I don't think that's what people necessarily are doing with this book, but if you asked me like 5 years ago, that's what I would have read this book for. But at this point in my life, that's not who I am. So ultimately, this book wasn't made for me, and that's okay. Honestly, when I finished this book, I felt nothing. It did not stay with me. It did not leave a lasting impression. Because to me, this book is telling me through very explicit and graphic scenes something that I already know, which is that a lot of women have gone through this experience. There are predators in the world, and they will take advantage of vulnerable women like Waldo. But I already knew that. So to me, this book didn't feel like it was contributing anything new, which again brings me to my point that if you're going to traumatize me, do it for a reason. Which brings me to the conversation that everyone seems to be divided on, the sex scenes. Sorry, I had to turn on the light. It was getting a little dark. I didn't realize the sun was already setting. As I've already mentioned, this book is extremely graphic, and particularly when it comes to the scenes that depict Waldo and Mr. Korgy having sex. It is rather descriptive, and yes, there are quite a few scenes in this book. So allow me to put my 2 cents in and give my thoughts about the inclusion of these scenes. Having those scenes and making them as descriptive as they are is meant to make you feel uncomfortable. I understand that. I think everyone understands that. But again, taking into account the overall message, or lack thereof, of this book, it comes across more as just shock value. I think there are plenty of other disgusting scenes in the book that convey the same message, and they serve the same purpose, which is to make you feel uncomfortable, while at the same time not showing these characters actually having sex. There's one scene in particular where Waldo is getting ready for a hookup with Mr. Korgy. Already hate that I have to use that word, but that's essentially what it is. She first tells us that there was another instance in which Mr. Korgy called her and he was like, okay, we have this window of time. You have to make it here in like 30 minutes or whatever. She took too long getting ready, so they missed their window. And again, because she is so invested in the relationship, she doesn't want any of their time to go to waste. So in light of that incident, she has like a to-go basket in her car that has anything she could possibly need, like a change of clothes, deodorant, perfume, stuff like that. So there's a scene where she shows up to his house and she's on her period. So while she's getting ready in the car, she pulls out her tampon and puts it in the glove compartment. And that's part of her routine to get ready for him as fast as possible. That scene is so striking and so wildly uncomfortable in a way that is, again, intentional. It shows you just how under his spell Waldo is. It conveys the desperation she feels and how destructive she's acting because of his manipulation. I think it conveys the exact emotions that those sex scenes are supposed to convey. The discomfort, the disgust of seeing an adult man with a minor. But again, this scene perfectly encapsulates those feelings without showing that. I'll say that the first scene between Waldo and Mr. Korgy, where she approaches him in his classroom is essential, for lack of a better term, when it comes to developing the plot, particularly because at that point, Mr. Korgy has already rejected Waldo. He has already said, no, this is inappropriate. I'm not going to pursue this with you. Even as she's trying to pursue him, he's not so convincingly trying to push her off of him. So that discomfort that you're getting in that first scene, I think is essential to kind of build up what their relationship is supposed to be. It has a purpose when it comes to the overall story, but I think the amount of scenes is just a bit too much. Again, because I believe that the overall purpose of the book is just meant to make you sad, for lack of a better term. There's no overall message. It is just a tragedy. So again, to have these scenes repeated so often throughout the book, I think is a bit gratuitous. On that note, there is a slur in this book. Yeah, in 2026, we have the R slur making a reappearance. This is something that people have been observing, that for some reason, people are very comfortable using that word in public. The inclusion of this word just lends itself to my greater interpretation of this book that a lot of it is just for shock value, because the word is used for shock value. So let me give you some context. In chapter 28 of this book, Waldo is talking about how she obsessively shops online and oftentimes gets buyer's remorse. She'll receive everything in the mail and then decide, hey, this doesn't actually look as good as I thought it did. I'm actually no longer interested in this item, and she'll return it. So she is talking about the discomfort of having to return these items and says, I'll probably end up returning half this shit. It's embarrassing every time I have to make a return. Every time I have to confront the gaping disparity between what I thought could be and what actually is. I can always see in the employees' eyes that they know it too. Oh, that top didn't work out is a nice way of saying, you fucking piece of shit. You're a fucking arsler. If you thought that blouse was gonna make the difference in your shitty life. When I tell you, I literally gasped upon reading that word. Even just from the passage I read, like, we're already cussing. You couldn't figure out a different word to use besides that. Mind you, it's only used once and it's dropped like a fucking bomb. Given the context of how the word is used, it's clear that they are attributing the R slur to something like stupid or dumb. You know how many ways you could have said that without using a full-on slur in 2026? I'm truly baffled. Like, how did we get to this point? There is no lead up. There is no indication that that is where we're going. It's wildly unwarranted, and don't get me wrong, there's never a reason to use that word. In today's world, it's just so jarring to read, and it really does take you out of the story, which is never something that you want to happen as an author or as a reader. That reason alone warrants a 1-star review. I'm so sorry, I will not be explaining further. Again, this is my personal thing. That's my line in the sand. There is absolutely no reason you should be using slurs like that in this day and age. There are so many other ways to make a character unlikable. There's so many other ways to describe what you were trying to describe. This just did not land well for me and a lot of other people, and I just want everyone to know that yeah, this alone is a very big reason why I didn't like the book. It completely took me out of the story, and it really soiled it for me on top of all the other reasons. I will never understand, and I'll never accept any reason that someone can provide me for why you would include that in a book. That's the one thing in this whole video that I'm not going to be accepting any criticism on. So sorry. Overall, to me, Half His Age was a bit of a letdown, but it was enlightening in terms of what we could expect from Jennette McCurdy in the future. She has said herself that she can't really write functional family dynamics or in general functional characters. I'm not exaggerating. That is how she has worded it, okay? I'm not being a bitch. So I think in the future, we shouldn't really expect for her stories to have happy endings. She writes tragedies. She writes these very emotionally intense and sad stories, which I think there is a group of people that really enjoy those stories. Unfortunately, I am not one of those people. I have discovered a lot about myself upon reading this book, and that is that I generally don't like to be sad. Like, there are some tragedies that I understand and that I actually enjoy, but I need to take something away. I don't want to be in charge of starting the conversation. I think this book is really relying on the reader to assign a lot of meaning. And normally I'm okay with that, but when it comes to a book like this that is written by someone like Jennette McCurdy, I'm reading it because I want to hear what you think. I want to hear what you have to say about it. Because a lot of people pointed out that this story exists. People write about these kinds of relationships all the time. The reason a lot of people picked up the book is because they wanted to hear what she had to say about it. So to not really have a clear message to come from this book is a bit of a letdown, at least for me, that is. So with that being said, that's the end of my video. I understand that a lot of people like this book. I know that already on YouTube, so many people have given it positive reviews. I don't even qualify this as a negative review because this is truly just me talking out my ideas, talking out my thoughts, and trying to make sense of how I feel about this book. I feel very strongly that the slur should not have been included, but everything else, I'm like, I don't really know. Now, although I did have a lot of strong opinions in this video, I am open to hearing other people's thoughts. So be sure to leave a comment. Let me know if you agree, disagree, what you thought of the book, if you've read it. I really feel like I'm in the minority. I think a lot of people genuinely like this book. I'm not here to persuade you one way or the other. I am simply giving my perspective. I don't think a lot of people have really given voice to a lot of the things that I took notice. So this is really just me talking out my thoughts and ideas. I think Jennette McCurdy is a wonderful person. I'm happy that she has found a career in writing and she's been so successful. She seems very passionate. She seems to have genuine talent. Unfortunately, I just don't think I'm someone that would like the kinds of books that she writes. I'm still open to reading her memoir, and I think I still will, but when it comes to her fiction releases, I don't think I will like them. But again, I know that a lot of people love her books, and that's fine. I'm not trying to say that the books are objectively bad. They're just not my taste. I'm obviously not the target audience for them. And you know what? That's okay. I'm just here to give my perspective. If some of you agree, if no one agrees with me, that's fine. I'm okay with that. But anyway, be sure to like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure to follow me on all my social media at Listen to Kristen on TikTok, Instagram, and Goodreads. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. My SD card no longer has memory, so I'm just gonna stop this here. Thank you.